I'm delighted to introduce Lolita Lopez to you. Where is Lolita? Okay, good. Be good if they come up front, because we're ready to start. As we wait for Lolita to come into the hall, let me just say, we're talking about trailblazers across the piece here, and she is one. She is an investigative reporter for NBC4, Southern California. She has a list of awards attached to her name. I'm not going to run through them all because she'll be embarrassed, but it's a long one, and she has been reporting on some of the big stories of the last 15 to 20 years. I mean, I'm talking the big stories, so I can't think of anyone better, really, to chair up a session which is all about the search for equality of opportunity. So, Lolita, please join us. Thank you.
He did embarrass me. How are you all today? Good? You got your lunch? Hi. Oh, so many good friends and partners in the room. I really appreciate it. This is such a special panel for me because I feel like this is what I'm all about in terms of my work as well as when I played sports. So aside from the news, I was a former athlete. I played volleyball and ran track at Harvard. I still try to dabble every once in a while and show young kids that I can still play. My dad was women's track and field coach at Rice University for over 3 decades and continues to work with the IAAF and the IOC in that regard. So when I tell you I live and breathe it, I live and breathe it. And now I have the mother, I've been a mother for a long time, but now she is 14 and a rising freshman and trying to navigate the wide world of volleyball in that, in track and field with her. Different perspective. So again, crossing all lines, definitely. This panel is unbelievable, and we've made it diverse on purpose because we're all about unity and partnership, and we can't get anywhere unless we are all together. In fact, I wear a bracelet, and I usually leave this for the end, but I want to start with it. It's our mother-daughter group that I'm in, and our phrase is Ubuntu, which is an African proverb that means, I am who I am because of who we are together. So if we take that with us today and everything that we learned here, we can definitely do a lot for everyone. So I'm going to just bring everyone in individually, and then I'll have them sort of speak about themselves really quickly and again right into the panel. So first off, I feel like Vanna White and Alex Trebek all at the same time. Marv Dunphy from Pepperdine University, please step down. Next we have Stein Metzger. Congratulate him, national champion. Women's beach volleyball this year, UCLA. We also have Tamika Smith-Jones from UC Riverside. You can clap, that's fine. And finally rounding it out is Dan Trump from Georgetown University. Yeah. So folks, since I have you there already, just give everyone a little quick taste of who you are, what you do, and where you come from, and I might add a couple of details if you leave them out. So Marv, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I put in 40 years coaching men's volleyball at Pepperdine, and then with USA team, several Olympic Games with the men, and then the last 2 with the women. And I think that's why I got invited, because I'd worked with men and with women. And I'll just say this. What's interesting is people will say, Marv, you coached with the men and you coached with the women, and what's the difference? And what I found out is that if I just waited a few seconds or a minute or two, they told me the difference, and it's kind of interesting.
And we'll get to that. Stein, yourself, and again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Stein Metzger from Honolulu, Hawaii. I played for many years, first at UCLA, and then played professionally beach volleyball for 14 years, played in the Olympics, was at the right place at the right time, returned back to UCLA, and was invited to help with the women's indoor team with Coach Mike Seeley. At the same time, we decided to start a beach program, so ran on both fronts for a little while. Now I'm solely running the beach volleyball program at UCLA. Been doing that for 6 years, so really learning a lot in the last 6 years about what it means to be involved in women's sports and learning how to coach with women, and have an 8-year-old daughter, so pretty soon we'll be navigating the sports world much like you have been. and
You can
very
call me.
interested to learn from this panel.
Thank you so much, Shine. Tamika.
I'm Tamika Smith-Jones. I'm the Director of Athletics at Riverside. I'm an East Coaster, so I came from Atlanta, Georgia, where my background is historically black colleges and universities. I played basketball, went through a traditional probably route into the athletic director seat as a former student athlete, coach, and administrator. I started coming west by way of University of Texas San Antonio, where my mentor and a good colleague of mine, Lynn Hickey, took the chance on hiring another sitting athletic director to build out her team at UTSA. And then Riverside called, and so I got a chance to, for the third time, serve a minority institution, which is really my mission work. So honored to be here. I've done some work with Renata at LA 84, and I'm just excited about this opportunity to share.
Excellent. Thank you. Dan?
Yes, Dan Trump. I'm Senior Associate Athletic Director at Georgetown University. It's surreal to be here because I actually started here
Oh, wow.
a long time ago. Brian Quinn was the athletic director, and so I was here 92 to 99 and was here when Bill got hired. He called me on Thursday or Friday, needed some, and my background is baseball. I played baseball in college at Cal, and asked me to step in. I think they had somebody else planned and couldn't make it, so I was asked to pinch hit, so to speak. I said, Bill, you have to remember, I wasn't that good of a player. I was the one that got pinch hit for. So, but anyway, it's great to be here. I was here yesterday and through this morning, and it's actually very humbling. The speakers have been amazing and dynamic, and it's exciting to be a part of this panel and looking forward to it. So.
And we're honored to have all four of you here. You're all very humble, but you're also amazing and very much a part of what we wanted to talk about today, which we wanted to, I mean, how broad of a topic. We have like the afternoon for us, right? But what we wanted to do is kind of break it down a little bit so we can get our minds focused on things that we can actually take home. Takeaways are like my favorite thing. And so we're dividing it up into opportunities for females as athletes and opportunities for females as coaches. And we'll start with the athletic round. And I think when most of us think of equality, we think of Title IX and how it has affected us. Tamika, let's start with you. Title IX for you and your organization, how has that helped create opportunities for female athletes?
Well, I'm a post-Title IX baby, so I'm fortunate for those that came before me. I think, you know, when you're raising kids these days, I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. I think about Title IX a lot from the perspective of my daughter first played sports with a co-ed team, and so, you know, doesn't know the difference of being a female on a co-ed team. And then my son even asking sometimes, Mommy, you gonna come coach our team this year? And I'm like, no, son, you don't want that to happen. But just having those conversations are really good for what Title IX has done for us. But, you know, on a college campus, we just make sure that, you know, there's equity across the board, and that I think Title IX has provided a way for us to be more conscious of those opportunities and presenting equitable opportunities for all sports. All genders. And also, one of the things that I really pride myself of having experience in my trajectory as an administrator was the senior woman administrator appointment that NCAA implemented years ago, which was to make sure that the senior most administrator that was a female was at the table of all decision making. And so that was one of those appointments that really allowed me to see the value in having diverse you know, thinking and leaders at the table that were specifically for females. So
it makes a lot of sense. And Dan, as an administrator where you are and you deal with compliance, how are you ensuring the same thing, that women are represented equally?
Sure. So from a compliance standpoint, you know, when we think of compliance and those that have done compliance on a campus before, I think the first thing you think about is always the participation rate and the quality there. And so when it comes to ensuring that women are represented, I mean, that's a part of it. I think in the next step, you know, you think about making sure our, and this is more of an HR side of things, but just making sure we have the diverse pools. And I think one of the challenges we sometimes face as administrators, and we can talk about it when we get to the Q&A maybe, is a lot of times we will go to the same pool of applicants, so to speak, those folks that we know. And I think we have to challenge our coaches and our administrators and each other really to make sure that we're looking at the full and diverse pool of applicants. A lot of times we might just go right to the people that we already know. I know coaches will do that a lot. Coaches that I work with, when they have openings on their staff, hey, I got a guy, I want to do this. Let's take a broad look at it. And I think those are some of the challenges that, coming out of this, hopefully, that we can talk about and address as well.
That actually reminds me of a story my dad used to tell when he was late 70s, early 80s at Rice. Everybody was trying to get fast runners from, Texas and California. And we from Puerto Rico and the Caribbean, he's like, what about the Caribbean? Let's go down there and start recruiting. And no one had gone to Barbados, Jamaica, or anywhere else to find some girls, and they're fast. So anyway, and Stein, I love that you're here on this panel just because I see my daughter loving beach volleyball now, the opportunities in the sport that you're in are immense. And that's one of the ways that Title IX has helped to sort of increase participation of females in collegiate athletics by creating new opportunities, new sports to be able to do that. How have you seen any changes in terms of giving female opportunities to athletes?
I think that's stuck. Well, I think the place where I see it the most is when I'm out recruiting on beaches. Certainly, the sport is the fastest growing sport in NCAA history. We got to 50 teams, which allowed the NCAA to pick it up as a sanctioned sport. But where I really noticed it again is out recruiting. I just noticed that the numbers of athletes that are out there on a day-to-day basis during the summer, during the year, playing year-round, and competing and getting out there is enormous. And in fact, my hope is that we can continue to grow the sport because it's starting to get to once the opportunity was built out, there was an explosion of players at the youth level, and then the growth of the teams, institutions that are joining has slowed down a little bit, and so now there's a bit of a bottleneck. But the sport is moving so fast and so dynamic, and things are changing all the time. But right now, today, you take a timestamp today of what's happening, I'd really like to see the growth of the institutions continue to grow so that there are places for these young ladies to play.
So more sports, more beach volleyball, but maybe more different sports being incorporated at university that may not have something already in place.
In terms of beach volleyball, right now, where I think we went from 50 to 65 over the course of about 3 years, whereas opposed to initially in 4 years we got to 50 teams. I think I'd like to see the growth continue across the nation, because right now it's basically in the coastal regions. If we can start to grow in other areas, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for these young ladies. But I really see just a handful of scholarships and opportunity to get into some colleges has really created a ton of opportunity for people to continue playing past the junior level. And also, it's really just opened up participation at the junior level and given young athletes an opportunity to get all the benefits that come from playing sports.
And I see a little bit of a theme here with what Dan and Tamika were saying now with Stein, is sort of looking outside the boxes that you've already been in terms of either looking for athletes, looking for a different sport to bring to your school, just something to open up past what you may already know. Marv, you touched on this in your intro, and I always laugh when you say this. So Marv is an amazing man and a great humanitarian and a great coach. And I've gotten to meet Marv when we volunteer with youth, little girls playing volleyball on grass courts, and he treats it just like he was coaching his men at Pepperdine or the U.S. women's national team, which he is a part of and continues to be a part of now. So thank you for what you do. But with coaching men and women and seeing those differences, we talk about sort of just the athletes and what they are able to do. I'm sorry, let me start with athletes. These athletes and what they can do. We talk about going to the collegiate level, but you've been with some women who play past just that level. What are some of the opportunities that you're seeing for women if they want to grow and they want to continue playing their sport?
So in 1988, I coached the men, and I was familiar with the women's program, and there were 0 international transfers for the women. And I spoke with USA Volleyball yesterday. 2018, there were 435 transfers, male and female, 350 were female transfers internationally. So the in the past, it was, have volleyball or have a life, have a family, play volleyball, one or the other. And now they're, and the money for the better female athletes internationally is maybe $500,000 to $1 million for 5 months. And again, going back to when I first started coaching, our teams were really young. We weren't together. We would train for a few weeks and just get crushed by the Russians, the Cubans, whoever. And now our teams are older because they're able to have these long careers into their mid-30s, making really good money. So lots of good opportunities.
And are there some of the challenges of having that home life? I know that we were speaking before here about what USA Women's Volleyball is actually doing to help that.
So what Lolita is referring to is Karch Garai, the head coach for the USA Women, the last quad, said, hey, it's not have a family or play volleyball. Let's see if we can't do both. So he started this program, I think himself with USA Volleyball. I don't think it was a USOC program where they took care of the family. Megan Hodge Easley had a child, and they were able to bring, a spouse along, a grandmother along, with flights, with housing, with help. And I think the model is USA Women's Soccer. And I think going forward, we're going to see more of that. And I'm optimistic.
That's a really great program and a great way of being able to ensure that you keep your talent and they can also be able to play on in order to, have a life and to continue with that. In order to give time for questions, I really want to move through what we're doing. And so I want to transition now to coaching and sort of along the same lines of what we were already talking about. But Dan and Tamik, if we can start with you. As you're recruiting female athletes and trying to expand your profile in that respect, how are you doing the same with female coaches? And I wanted to read one fact from the Tucker Center on Research for Girls and Women in Sports out of Minnesota, Dr. Lavoie, who's amazing. And we talked before I came on this panel, she said the current number of women coaching in college is stagnant. It's at around 42% for the last 15 to 20 years. Same thing. So 42% over the last 15 to 20 years. How do we change that? How do we bring more females into coaching roles?
Well, I think first we have to have more females that they can look up to. And so getting that pool increased is important. One of the things that, I've learned from my experience, and I was asked to be an assistant coach by a male that was in the position to be a part of his team. And so sometimes, the young women, especially coming out of college, may not understand what that next part of, staying connected to sport or advancing their degrees. My journey was to start graduate school and be an assistant coach. And so I try to encourage our student athletes at UCR to do the same. And so I give them a pipeline, some direction, also mentorship, give them opportunities to have other resources that can show them. I'm glad to hear Marv say how the support system is there. And so as a female athletic director, it's also good to be able to show them that you can have both. Mm-hmm. You can have a career, you can continue your education, and you can continue to do something in sport and what you love. So sometimes I think the barrier is that they don't see enough of it, and so being able to increase that pipeline. As a board member of Women Leaders in College Sports, we look at the numbers all the time, and we hear the perception and try to dispel it all the time that there are not a lot of women that want to do the job, but there are a lot of women. We've just got to do, like Dan said, we just have to widen that perspective and widen that pool for them.
Marv, you wanted to add?
Yeah, mostly a question for the panel. So the Rooney Rule helped the minorities in the NFL, and I'm kind of curious, maybe to the panel, do we hear anything about creating a policy for intercollegiate athletics where if there's a women's opening that female, it's mandatory to interview a female. Is that in place, or is that ever talked about?
Actually, Dan, that actually goes right into what I was going to say. What kind of policies are there right now in NCAA for that?
I mean, to the Rooney Rule, there's not a policy for that. It again goes back to your HR practices in terms of opening up the diverse pool. And it really goes to the recruitment of potential coaches, right, and administrators. And you know, I think there's a lot of things we can do. Tamika hit on a lot of good items. I think, you know, it starts with really a grassroots effort. We talked about it yesterday, that mirroring effect. If they can see that as a possibility, that's important, and that happens before anyone gets to college. That's from when they're youth. If they see that as a potential opportunity, and they can see themselves in those shoes, I mean, I think that's where we have to get to, really. A couple things that we've done at Georgetown that I just want to touch on in terms of developing coaches as well. So a big part of it is you want to identify your student athletes that potentially could be coaches. I think that's important. Mentor them to get them into that thought process or that idea that they can make that a career and be a coach someday. Once they do become coaches, I think it's very important as administrators and as universities to have programming available, and that's either internal mentors. There's fantastic professional development opportunities through the NCAA and other avenues as well. One thing that we've done in the last year at Georgetown, and I promise I'll be quick.
No, I love it.
Is so we had a longtime administrator retire, and we really took a hard look at that position. Do we just hire a replacement and kind of do what we've always done? We decided to go a different route, and we hired our field hockey coach at the time. And she came in, and we developed a new position that she really was the person that was going to work directly with all our head coaches. And really, that coaching has changed in the last 5-10 years. It's not coaching wins and losses anymore. There's, as we've talked about the last day and a half, there are so many components to being a coach. You have to be a counselor, you have to be a parent, you have to be, you know, all these things that they're not equipped. You know, no one takes a coach's 101 class, and you don't learn those until it happens, and you have parents calling or complaining and whatever. And so we saw it as a valuable opportunity. So we hired Shannon as our associate AD for varsity sports administration. But what she really does, she's serving as that person that works with all of our head coaches, that brings them together on a routine basis to talk about all those different issues. And we really take all the other administrators out of the room, and they are allowed to just kind of talk about what is going on in their lives, just because that dynamic has changed so much as head coaches. So as part of that is just kind of that development of coaching how to be a better coach. And I think
and hopefully, you know, those folks feel they can be more real about the challenges that they're having, or like what they're doing, instead of being under this umbrella of like what this administration has always been about, what this school has always been about, and sort of maybe take some risks or do something a little bit different. Stein, you, in what you're doing with the newest sport out here, what are some of the numbers or some of the things that you're seeing in terms of women, female and male coaches in beach volleyball?
Well, I come prepared. I took a look at the top 20 teams in the country right now, and in terms of head coaches, 40% are women. At the time that we had a conference call, assistant coaches were at 30%. There's been a change. It's at 35% now. So it's lower than the number that you shared with us. Mm-hmm. And I don't know exactly why. I could lob a couple theories at it. The sport was dominated by men for many years, so men that are older and at that age where they could be coaches are available right now. I think my hope and my theory is that it will change because we're developing so many good volleyball athletes right now because of this opportunity by starting a new sport. And you're starting to see that, for example, University of Arizona 2 years ago hired one of their graduates, somebody who went through the program, and I think we're going to see more and more of that. There's more opportunity to be graduate students, graduate student coaches. So my guess is that will change. And I think also regionally right now, because it's such a regional sport, there's a lot of opportunity to pick up good female coaches in Southern California, for example, where there's a dearth of great ex-players and coaches. But if you look at some other areas like the East Coast, there may not be as many out there. But I think that's going to change. You're just seeing that in recruiting and the level of athlete in Texas and Florida, like the sport is starting to grow. And I think eventually, as time passes, there'll be coaches out there.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you on that, but it reminds me of sort of how I moved here with my journalism career. Was in New York as a main anchor. It was wonderful. It was great. I was on, doing this weird pictures on buses, and but I never saw my family. I literally dropped my daughter off at work, and then I dropped her off at school and saw her the next day. And when we moved here, the number one thing I asked for was Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, to have this time component. The reason I mentioned it is how much do families and that play a factor in how females and males, but since we're talking about women and opportunity, can be able to just pick up and move. And how do you, and how, as coach, but then also as administrators, how do you factor that in when you know this woman could be a fantastic coach, but she has these things, these limitations?
I was just going to say, from an NCAA standpoint, we've talked a long time about the whole life balance piece, right? And I think what's important is you have to get away from the old model of just, you're going to work nonstop. I mean, there has to be some balance. We see it with youth sports too, right? We always talk about that. There's this overuse and playing one sport, and I think we've had better results, with healthy mind, healthy body, with that, being a little bit more open to allowing for coaches to, have their practices in the morning so they can be home in the afternoons. And I think as administrators, you have to be very open to all of those different things for the right people. And if you want to hire the right coach, you're going to have to adapt a little bit to ensure that they can do that job.
Well, I'd love to speak about it since I'm doing it every day. I think that you have to, as a leader, sitting in the seat, I think, one, you have to, be an illustration of hope to your staff. They're only going to be as good as, you support them. And so I'm very conscious of what I do in front of my team and how I allow them to be the best persons that they can be. And family is very important. Their self-care is very important. I have my senior associate here, and I whip him every day about, have you worked out? Did you eat? Did you, do all these things? Where are your kids? You dropped them? One of the things that as coaches, administrators in athletics, it's a 24/7 job. And so my pet peeve is that I'm driving on two wheels to drop my kids off in the morning to get to a meeting on campus when we can have it for an athletic director anytime from 8 to 8 p.m. because we're going to be there most evenings. But, faculty may not be there at that time, or other administrators. So I think being able to just be very, communicate with staff. I've hired an awesome team from all corners of the world, USA right now, and I've had to manage them, onboarding them, giving them the time that they need to be able to make the transition. And even when I was hired at Riverside, it was a very important conversation that me and the chancellor had to have on, what it was going to take for me to be excellent in this job. And, my personal health, my family dynamics, and, being the best person when I show up all over the community was what he wanted, and it's what you get when you really help your team find that balance.
It's so true. If you follow Tamika on Instagram, she will make you get out of bed and work out. Because she start working out, I'm like, oh dear. I could read or I could do some workout because she's doing it already.
Glad I'm a good influence to you.
It actually leads me to, and Marv and I talk about this a lot, especially Marv, you as coaching male and females as athletes, and it's sort of a broader question. It's going to be for everyone, but what can we leverage as a person? If you want to be a coach, you've already told this person, you can make a good coach. What can we leverage as a person to use when we go in to speak to an administrator about pick me instead of someone else? Like, you said coaching is coaching for you. What makes a good coach? And how can you use that to pass it along?
Okay, I'll start off with what I think makes a good coach. And I think coaching is not knowledge. I think it's communication, control, courage to make a tough decision, caring. And I always say this: you can fool a fool, you can con a con, but you can't kid a kid. They know when you care. They know when you believe in them and when you don't believe in them. You know that, and you know, to go on with coaching, I think it's the good coaches have the ability to make the individual player feel bulletproof and their teams feel bulletproof, but it has to be real, it has to be authentic. So the best coaches are authentic and they're honest. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, it's true, and that's what I'm trying to say is I think people, you know, well, I'm up against this person and their resume is X, Y, and Z, and what, you know, what can I use? I mean, even with mine, when I walk into a room, I'm like, I literally have done 10 things before you've woken up. So I'm an excellent reporter because I can do all of those things at the same time and keep afloat, right? So, I mean, it's sort of leveraging my crazy personality and using that. So, but you answered it just spot on. It's just it's about those factors and not just the championships, and that can't be the driving force. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure.
And anybody else can chime in. Yeah.
And my thought, I'm digressing here too. So for years I did camps, and it'd be 250 girls, 250 boys, and especially in the early years, the moms, the dads would come up and they say, who's my daughter's coach? And I'd say, well, you know what, does she have a male coach? She responds better to a male coach. And I kind of bristled a little bit, and I'm not a very sarcastic person, but I'd say, now, do you want her to have a good coach or a male coach? A great coach or a great teacher or a male coach? And then they'd say, oh, you know what I mean. And so that has changed. And coaching the men and the women, I think either somebody has the qualities of an elite athlete, a proactive person, or they are on the other side where they're reactive and they have these inferior qualities. And it's not male or female. It's either you're Tony the Tiger or you're not Tony the Tiger, male or female.
Anyone else want to join in before we open the room?
I'd like to just say I just had the great opportunity to hire a coach, a men's basketball coach at Riverside recently. And one of the things that, you know, just as Marv said, I really was looking for was someone that could develop, you know, players, and that's one. And then secondly, help them to reach their goals. And so a lot of times we work or you see programs that are built to, you know, make coaches successful, other people successful, and then the student athlete don't earn the degree. They don't get an opportunity to go pro, and whether that's as professional businessmen or women or, you know, international or, you know, if they get an opportunity to play here in the States. So those are two things that I always am looking for. A proven winner, you know, someone that has done it already. Sometimes you can take that risk, and it depends on what kind of levels. I had the luxury of, at Clark Atlanta when I was the AD at a Division II, to hire first-time coaches. Both were females. Both were able to win our conference championships in a couple of years with the support that we were able to provide. But it's important that the coaches understand that the, you know, players must be the focal point, and their interests are more important. So being able to identify that is really key for me.
That's great. And I did want to open it up to the room. I'm not sure if this is something that's been done before or that they're done in other panels, but I really want you all, if you want to like come up, just shout it out or let me know. I'll point to you to be able to throw out a couple of questions to these folks. Anyone else wanted to join, or Marv?
You're the best. I have a question for you.
No.
So these stereotypes that just are still taught in segments of our country and our culture, you know, it's taken a long time to change a lot of that. And why do you think it's taking so long?
I feel it's a bunch of reasons that have already been brought up, but I think it's not having the opportunities out in front of you, so not seeing who the folks are. In fact, the Tucker Center has a campaign that's something like see it, be it, which is the idea is like just what Tamika said, is just like seeing that out there. I also think that it's in the way that we raise our boys and girls to be different instead of being together. So my daughter's qualities of just being tough and fierce are seen just as good as if she can put a pretty dress on. You know what I mean? And I don't think those two things ever coincide. And for a boy to be told that it is okay to be emotional and ask someone how they're feeling and not just be rough and tough and, go punch. I think all of those things have to happen at more youth level, and I'm seeing that a lot now. And you can, we had the opportunity to pick between two clubs. One club wanted championships, wanted to build, really strong and sort of what was traditionally done. The other one wanted to build good kids and players, and we went with that one, even though they weren't as good with their championships, and maybe they weren't as strong, and they didn't have the fancy gym with 25 courts, but they are teaching her to be a better person. And at the end of the day, we can all play sports forever, but where are you going to take it, and how are you going to use this? And that's really what we should be doing for our men and our women at an early age. Marv, you put me on the spot.
And I'd just like to say it takes a lot of courage, too, to be a change agent. So, there's a lot of power in the seats that we sit in. And so if we do our part, I think, it'll have a better effect on what happens to our young people and the young people that we inherit on college campuses. So in my instance, I very intentionally try to do my part and build a team that we will collectively be serving our student athletes well. So I think, just really having the courage to make some of the tough decisions is a real key part of it.
Yeah, it's hard to stand up to anyone, right? I mean, at this point. Anyone have any questions for our panel? Yes, sir.
I see these 6 banners, and none of them says win. They have wonderful concepts. But when I watch sports, collegiate sports or professional sports, I hear win. And when I coach high school, I hear win. And I know that when we come to these conferences, we point to the 6 banners, but when we leave, we point to win. So how can you help me create a culture in my girls to do those 6 things and still care about winning? Because I actually want to win, too.
Good question. Great question, and we all want to win.
I think those go hand in hand. I think, I'll let the coaches talk more about it, but I think if you do these 6 things, it's a byproduct. That's right. You do these things right, and you incorporate these values into your program and your student athletes and your coaches, I think winning is a byproduct. I think, and again, I'll let coaches talk about it because they can probably say it much better than I can. But you always hear about, you put the work in, you do the right things, all of those types of items. The winning is a byproduct. We don't, that happens. So.
I think it's the uncertain in sport. It's the uncertainty of the outcome that causes stress. If you knew you were going to win, there wouldn't be much stress. If you knew you were going to lose, there wouldn't be much stress, and unless you're going to lose your job. But I think coaches like John Wooden and Bill Walsh and others, but I'm pretty familiar with Coach Wooden, they took it beyond this win, lose, make this free throw, win, choke, and they made it about character and value. And so with Coach Wooden, you would, if you made the basket, you acknowledged the pass or the rebound or so on and so forth. And they made it about character and value. And I think their teams, I think most of us would agree, played at a much higher level. And they played free. And so nowadays we hear, focus on the process. And I don't think you can say to young people, process. I think you just have to do it.
Anyone else? You guys are good? Did anyone else? Yes, in the red shirt and then right behind. Thank you.
Hi, I just want to introduce a different element into the conversation, esports, e-athletes. While I recognize a majority of folks here are about the athletes who play in the traditional sports, who excel at the highest level possible at the high school, collegiate, and professional. However, esports doesn't pull from that pool, but yet it's growing as a tide for performance in the high schools and for the collegiate level and for the fans. The themes that are being introduced here, I believe, should be introduced to the pipeline that's being created for e-athletes. because e-athletes are now getting their own schools, they're getting their coaching facilities, they're getting a ton of stuff, but they're not getting, from my perspective, the themes that are being discussed here, which are healthy perspectives, both as the player, as a coach, as well as, so any questions on how some of this can actually extend to that new pipeline and that's being created as a parallel, but not as a, yes, that's about it.
Can you give an example of e-athletes for someone who doesn't know what that is?
E-athletes, short for esports. So esports is based on the notion that anybody who could basically handle a controller and play a game could be a competitive player. And competitive esports are all kind of games. They're not just sports games. They're not shoot 'em up games. They're any type of games. It's really about competitive gameplay. And now you have high school esports leagues. You have colleges which are providing scholarships, which are different leagues than what's played here. You have televised sports. I mean, it's a global phenomenon, and it's only growing. But yet, the notions that are being crafted here about quality, character, student, a broader perspective, the coaching and the ownership, looking at things as what's here, because this is much more mature pipeline. I think that those things need to be put on at this nascent industry as it grows, so it gets the proper tools to groom these new kinds of competitors.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, it just would be like, how do we put this out there in the world for anyone to take?
Yeah, I do see esports. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I do see esports. I mean, that is, like it or not, that is a future in college athletics and where we're going. There are, as you mentioned, universities out there that there are scholarships. I know from a Big East perspective, and I see Val and Vince back in the back, they've taken some initiatives with the esport side of things. So it is going to be part of where we are going as an enterprise, right? I mean, it'll be part of something that we do. Is what our youth are doing. And I see that as something that will be part of our culture and livelihood in intercollegiate athletics as well.
I wonder if that opens it up is there a need for training coaches in general, right? Like how to be a good coach. Is there a need where whether you're an E or in volleyball and, lacrosse can come and check that out?
If I may, I think that's the real point, because the toxicity that we've been chatting about here that can be avoided and the other things, that what adults or coaches bring to life needs to get into that particular new competitive realm, which has talented young folks who just find esports versus traditional sports as their outlet, but yet the adult framework is a necessary need to actually create better citizens, better character, better people, and it has to be actually interjected now versus later.
Mark?
Yeah, so part of my thought is I have a flip phone, so I couldn't really address part of your question. But I think what we see is high school sports kind of taking a back seat to club in almost every sport. And I think the problem with that is that we miss out on an opportunity to kind of mentor our young coaches to make sure we're getting the right things in place. And it's really, that's the win at all costs. And here's a Division I scholarship. You play here, and there's no layers to protect the young people and the families. And I think we're right in the middle of this boom, and it's, I don't know if it's going the right way. Somebody's going to have to step in, because the clubs, as long as somebody's winning, then that's okay. And what do the kids and what do their parents do? And some of these clubs don't allow their parents to be part of what's going on. And I don't know if you see that at Georgetown or back east.
And I will say, I actually had the opportunity to draw the first pitch at Natasha Watley's foundation, softball, that she brings to inner cities and just youth all across our area. She's amazing. But there was Sue Enquist from UCLA, former UCLA softball coach, and she was talking about something, because you're talking about this boom and sort of this idea that like everyone's figuring it out right now, that we need to really get on the ball and do this. And she actually is creating We Are One Softball, and it's basically a web platform with mini videos to sort of either, if you're a parent, this is what you should expect from club softball. If you're a coach, this is what you should sort of have as your factors in certain terms of teaching, because we were talking about this exact same thing, that, you know, you might find one or two really good coaches, but how do you navigate, and where is there a place where maybe we can learn a little bit or two? If we can learn how to, you know, Rubik's Cube and knit on YouTube, why can't we get some sort of knowledge, you know, digitally that way? So that's a really good point about how things are just sort of exploring. I would say just explore outside of e-games, right? Go find good coaches that are doing good things and just take that and take it back to wherever you're going to go. Yes, sir.
I think there's a major problem in our culture that people are not comfortable talking about. Title IX's created great opportunity and participation for women in collegiate sports, but if you look at professional sports, well, look at collegiate sports, the only two revenue-generating sports, as I understand it, are football and basketball, and I think it's men's basketball for the most part. And look at professional sports, the ratings are all going to male sports. I think that's the next step forward, is how do we, and maybe like the panelists' ideas on this, Marv, you're saying that there's all these women playing internationally volleyball professionally, but there's not a professional successful league for women in the United States. What can we do to get to that next level?
Son, you might have some players who sort of, you know, I mean, you've been in both sides, right? You've played and you've traveled around, now you're coaching here. How do you tell some of your athletes that there are possibilities for them outside?
Yeah, well, in our sport, in beach volleyball, in fact, it's been flipped. On the AVP, the professional tour that's domestic in the U.S., the men traditionally would always be the highlighted game that were featured last and be the last game of the tournament. When Misty and Carrie started having a lot of success and winning gold medals, they actually flipped that because they were getting better ratings than the men. So I think in our sport, our athletes understand that there's opportunity as professionals later on. How we change that for other sports, I don't know, but it certainly has happened in beach volleyball because of the success that Misty and Karen have had. And my guess is because of the number of players and the talent pool that's being diverted from indoor volleyball and from other sports into beach volleyball now, in 10 to 15, 20 years, the U.S. is going to continue to dominate internationally, and my guess is they're going to be knocking on the door for gold medals consistently. And I think that itself in our sport is going to continue to help women be featured as great athletes, equal to or even greater than the men, because it is a slightly different game, and one that me personally, I've learned to appreciate over the last 6 years, because the men, yes, they're very dynamic. They can get up and smash the ball, and it's fun to watch in short periods. But I've really learned to love the women's game because of the rallies that they have and the strategy. And I hear that time and time again from people that come up to me. This is so great. I've never been to a women's beach volleyball game. It's so fun. There's so much drama with these long rallies. It's so great. And so I don't know how well I'm answering the question, but I know in our sport, it has become a really well-watched sport and entertaining, and the women are on equal footing when you go to a professional event, and there are some special things that they do. So I don't know how that helps other sports, but certainly maybe it's category by category in terms of like what a women's sport looks like, how they play the game in comparison to the men, and how watchable is that, how entertaining is that, and what kind of fan base will they draw.
Right, and actually just in leveraging the good, you know, the winning and the success that they've had, and how do you put that into play? And I'll be real with you guys, Tamika, how do you get people to come to watch the women's basketball game over or as much as they would come to a men's basketball game at your school?
We're trying to still solve that concern, but as a member of the Women's Basketball Committee for Division I mean, it's one of those challenges that we're talking about nationally on how to make the messaging, the marketability, telling more stories of what our women are doing, you know, personally and professionally. I think that translates right onto our campuses. I mean, we've just got to make it a better experience for our fan base that do show up, but also, you know, the access to, you know, whether you're giving, you know, tons of tickets away, sometimes you can give them away and they still don't show up, but it's about how you make them feel when they do show up that creates, I think, better opportunities for them to come back. So as far as, you know, media, I mean, dollars and cents really changes everything. So the media and the marketability is really the key to it. So if we can get, you know, all the guys to bring out the girls and the guys, that are in your household to, women's games. I think we can see that thing turn really quickly, but we are still picking and choosing whether we're going to support, the NBA or really going to show up for the WNBA. And I know my colleague Christine should be here, I think, today, so maybe she'll talk about some of what they're experiencing at the WNBA level.
Yeah, it's really hard. And Dan, I don't know if you want to touch on anything at all, but I was just at a panel with the Sparks and the Kings, and they're trying to do as much as they can just to get fans in the room and to keep them there by looking at the family experience, right? So having like a family day and bringing them in, just anything that they can do, like Wear Purple Day, anything that is sort of can be seen as gimmicky, but really it's just to get people in the door. Because Stein, I've kind of sort of, what people relay to you about, I didn't know that the rallies were this great, or how that played out. How do you see sort of within your own schools or with having digital platforms? So like I just saw that the FIBA for volleyball has their own YouTube channel now. So you can watch any beach volleyball game or any indoor international competition on your phone. I've watched more volleyball in the last 2 years than I've ever had because I'm now able to do it, and so now that attracts. So how are you? I don't know if Georgetown or is that? Do you guys, can you stream it, show it? How much does digital have play a factor in all of that?
Yeah, no, I think digital's been huge. I mean, it's been the platform where everybody can see our games and all that. The Big East Digital Network has been fantastic for us in broadcasting, not just men's basketball and women's basketball, but sports across the board. And I think a lot of institutions have their own YouTube channels, and Facebook Live is growing and growing with showing games. So the platforms out there it's been fantastic, and that helps grow the program. Back to the other question that Tamik was talking about in terms of helping with women's basketball. One of the initiatives that we've done, and I think a lot of schools do this, but we'll do afternoon midweek games and bring in all of the local elementary schools and then conduct a clinic. And I think that's been an avenue to grow that as well. So, I mean, it's not rocket science, and a lot of people do that, but those are all things that you can do to help grow it. But the digital network piece is huge because you can see it worldwide. So
every little bit helps. Think globally, think outside the box in both aspects, and hopefully there will be more and more opportunities for women. And 5 years from now, we may not even need this panel, we hope. Thank you so very much. My time is up. Please, a round of applause for our panel.